Sai, hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast for internet.
Sure.
Uh, your video is frozen. Yeah, we got connected.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit of a problem with that. It's okay though.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Glad to be on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
It's well, we're getting close to the holidays. Starting to wrap up some presents and take a little bit of time off from all of the conferences are finished. All of my talks are done. All of my podcasts are I'm wrapping up the last of my podcasts. So yeah, it's a little bit of I'm looking forward to a little bit of downtime.
So actually, I got connected to you at in 2021 for the interview. Finally, after 2 years, after this is end of the year, so I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I mean, what with the pandemic and everything, it certainly has been a long time coming. Glad to finally be on.
And I saw you recently have visited the reInvent event.
Yeah, it was super fun. So I am now an employee of Hashicorp, and so I went to reInvent this year as a developer advocate for Hashicorp, but also as an AWS hero. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to chat with a lot of really smart folks from AWS and from the different companies, like Merritt Bear, who is a CISO over at Lacework now. She's fantastic in the security space. Brooke Jameson is amazing in AI ML. Um, a lot of amazing folks out there. Matthew Bonig, Calvin Hendricks Parker, just amazing folks in their field. I love chatting with folks who are just like, at the bleeding edge of their technology stack, the things that they're working on, figuring out what excites them and, vibing with them. It's really funny because a lot of these folks I get to only see once a year. So, showing up to reInvent is, reconnecting with old friends, making new friends, figuring out, what's the new fun place to eat in Vegas is always a fun trick. So yeah, reInvent is one of my favorite conferences.
Awesome. So before going into your profile, can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Williams. I am an AWS hero. I am a developer relations advocate for HashiCorp, and I have a podcast and a couple of user groups. So I'm very active in the community. Oh, I can't hear you, Sai. I think you muted yourself.
Yeah. So before talking more about before talking more about you and the work that you are doing and the work that you did, I just want to tell about my sponsor for this episode.
Please do.
Which is Stat Adam. Sales and customer facing teams often switch between several communication tools, causing time management and visibility issues that can slow down deal velocity. The solution is Stat Adam, where conversation converts. With Stat Adam, your team can centralize all communications within your chat tool. No more switching, waiting, or fragmented chats because the messaging is where business gets done. Sales teams can stay in Slack or Microsoft Teams and connect with customers, leads, or candidates on their existing chat tool, building better relationships through constant communication in inbound or outbound messaging. Make it encrypted and compliant, plus bring all communication in your CRM or ticketing system. No data entry required. Join Start Adam to enhance customer relationships and close deals at hyper speed with unified chat. Thank you very much, Chris, for your presence on my show again.
Sure, no problem. Happy to be here.
So, tell me about your experience with in reInvent. Have you met the Vice President Jeff Brash?
So, because I'm an AWS hero, I do get the opportunity to chat with a lot of folks at the show. AWS employees. This year, we met with Werner Vogels. We had our our dinner with him. I chatted with Jeff. Wonderful human being. I super love Jeff. A lot. I met. I do chat with a lot of folks from there. It's a really good opportunity for me to catch up with them personally, but also figure out what's going on in their neck of the woods. Chat about what's exciting them, what's next on the horizon, what's going on in their world. It's a really good opportunity to just to figure out what's happening and do a little. Because I've been work from home for, I want to say, about 7 years now. So I was work from home since before the pandemic. So getting out and catching up with all of these folks who I don't catch up with in the office because I'm a big extrovert. It's weird because I'm an extrovert, but I work from the house. So I don't get the opportunity to actually be physically present with people until I'm at a conference or I'm at a user group or something like that. So that's when I get to, scratch that itch.
So, tell me about your role as a developer and as a person who is into AWS.
Sure. So my role at Hashicorp is I'm a developer advocate. Actually, I'm the developer advocate manager for North America, but in that capacity, I also do DA work for Hashicorp. It's kind of a player coach role. What that means is that I'm very interested in talking about the HashiCorp tool set, Terraform, Vault, Boundary, Console, Waypoint, Packer, Vagrant, all the fun stuff. I'd been using the tools for a very long time. And so when HashiCorp approached me at reInvent last year and asked me if I thought about, being a DA, I was like, well, tell me more about it. What does that even mean? Because I've always been involved in community it's been my hobby. I enjoy getting on podcasts. I enjoy talking to people. I love panel chats and presenting and running meetups and user groups and all of those things. I'd never thought about doing it as a profession. So when they approached me, they were like, hey, why don't you come do your hobby for us, for a paycheck? And I was like, is that a thing I can do? and they were like, yeah, absolutely. So prior to that, I was an enterprise architect. I worked for WWT, which is a large company. It's the largest company nobody's ever heard of. Wonderful group of people over there as well. I was in the ProServe team, the professional services team at WWT, functioning as an enterprise architect, as a solutions architect, fixing customer problems for, the Fortune 100s and going out and doing the things with with the rest of my cloud team. Invariably, I was always using HashiCorp tools. Like whenever a big company wanted to start leveraging infrastructure as code, start getting into the cloud in a cohesive, repeatable, scalable pattern. So they want to create their dev environment, their UAT environment, and their production environment. They want them all to look exactly the same, except, some of the names are different and some of the instance sizes are different, or they want to leverage a repeatable pattern. That's when they flip over to infrastructure as code. So I'd seen this over and over and over again, and I'd always be using Terraform or, some of the IAC tooling that are out there. If they wanted to go native, then they would use CloudFormation or Bicep or whatever. If they wanted to remain vendor agnostic, they would leverage Terraform. And I don't want to get like too commercially. I love talking about it, but I also want to be careful about, go over rotating too much. So HashiCorp approached me and they're like, hey, what you like talking about Terraform? Why don't you come talk about Terraform for us? And I was like, okay, that sounds like fun. So that was about a year ago and I've been there since.
So you as an enterprise architect and a solutions architect, so how is that experience and what kind of projects that you have done?
I was so the term in the U.S. is kind of like a smoke jumper or a firefighter. I was dropped into projects that had gone poorly. So the company would engage with Worldwide. The project would sometimes go great, sometimes go bad. If the project started going bad, then I would get called in to help fix the problems. So I gained a reputation there as somebody that could take a project that was not going fantastic, figure out what the issues were with that, and then, get the project back on track. My role there was largely cloud migrations, leverage application development from a DevOps perspective, making sure that CI/CD pipelines were solid, making sure that security and testing was done well. I had a large group of folks that were absolutely fantastic underneath me. As an enterprise architect, I would be helping to run several different streams of work. So I would be the I would be the EA, the enterprise architect. And underneath me, I would have several solutions architects for each phase of the project. And then underneath the solutions architect, there would be solutions engineers, the actual hands-on keyboard folks. My counterpart in these kinds of projects would be an engagement manager. And then for each one of those streams of work, every SA would have, one project manager to keep an eye on things. So I would work very closely with an engagement manager to make sure that the projects and all of my SAs and all of my SCs from a technical standpoint were getting the work done. And then the project manager would, from a timeline and Gantt charting and are the right things happening and finishing at the right time perspective, we would be working closely together to, make sure projects went properly.
So you are a speaker, you attend conferences, you also being a podcast host, co-host, and you're talking, and also you're a leader. You're telling people what to do and how to make things happen, and understanding how the enterprise thing works. So how do you define yourself? How do you enjoy the work that you're doing? What is exciting you in the work that you do in the present role?
That's a great question. I love teaching. I love learning. I love education. I really enjoy helping other people figure out what it is they want to do, with their lives. And if they want to get into tech, I enjoy helping, carve a path for them to get to where they want to be. When I do my own learning for myself, I really like to learn in public. I like to, fire up the camera and say, hey, I'm going to learn this today. And then I just learn in public. And then I try to, for me, the best way to really cement something in my head is to teach it to somebody else. So if I'm going to be learning Terraform, then I'm going to learn Terraform in such a way that I can help a bunch of other people learn Terraform by teaching it to them. It really, really gets it into my head. So that's why Andrew Brown and I did the Terraform Beginner Bootcamp. We're about to start the Terraform Intermediate Bootcamp. That's why I wrote the article for Free Code Camp on the study list of all of the things that you need to read up on to pass your Terraform Associate certification, which I actually used myself to go pass my Terraform Associate certification. So I like to practice what I preach. If I'm going to go out there and, be an advocate for a learning path or something like that, I'm going to do it myself as well. So I love doing that. I love helping other folks get into tech. I think it's a very good place for people that haven't necessarily been able to advocate for themselves to like get into and get into something that can be very beneficial. I mean, the pay scales for tech is it's what they are. Tech pays good. So I like to help people, level up and also get paid well.
So different enterprises have different architecture. So how do you understand that and how do you solve the problems?
That's a great question. Every company that I've ever worked in or been brought into to kind of like figure out what's happening, they're all different. Every large organization, as they grow organically. So every company is a unique snowflake. The way that I try to figure out every new company is I ask dumb questions. I call them Chris's dumb questions. I go in there and I say, okay, what's this? Why did we do it this way? What's happening over here? A lot of times when I'm in a group of folks and we're going through a review of an environment, I'll ask really high level questions about why did we get to this place with this thing? And invariably, what I'll find is that employees that have been inside of a company for years, they'll come to me after these sessions and they'll be like, oh my God, thank you for asking that question. I've been wondering that for years. But I was always afraid to ask that question. I am completely unafraid to ask any question. That's my superpower. I'm unafraid to let myself look dumb in front of other people. I'm totally fine with it. So what I'll do is I'll go into a company, I'll ask them for all of their documentation. Sometimes it'll be great documentation. Sometimes it'll be horrible documentation. Sometimes it'll be no documentation. And then I figure out, okay, let's start writing the documentation for this environment. I have a background in TOGAF, which is the Open Architecture Graph. I forget what it stands for, but TOGAF is a certification for solutions architects. It's good for some things, but what it's really good at is helping you figure out what kinds of questions to ask, how to frame functional requirements, what's really important, what's not so important, defining your stakeholders. It's really good for figuring out when you're talking to people within an organization, how you want to couch your questions and what kind of dictionary of words you want to use. So that, coupled with my psychology degree, ironically, it has been very helpful for me in asking questions.
So you mentioned something that is different from technology. So psychology degree you have. What's your background that is making you do great things today? Because you are doing multiple things today. What you did before?
So that's a lot. So my parents were in the service. So we moved around a lot. The first time I moved to the States was when I was 18 years old. I was born in Japan. I was raised in Germany. My mother's a Greek national, so we spent a lot of time in Greece. So every new place that I was put into, I got a new exposure to a new way of learning or a new methodology. So my background is I have a degree in psychology. I was a martial artist for a while I was attending university. I spent a lot of time doing like full contact martial arts and stuff. I was also a bartender. I was also a bouncer. I've done a lot of things, but the way that I got into tech was when I was in university. I was also a very avid video game player. I loved playing video games with my roommates in the college dorms. I liked it so much that I started learning networking so I could wire all of our computers together locally in the dorm room, and so that we could all play Doom together. Doom, do you know what Doom is? It's a shoot 'em up video game. Okay. So we liked playing Doom and we wanted to shoot each other. So I figured out how to do networking and I got really good at it. And eventually I had like 8 people in the dorm room and they would bring over their computers and we would play video games. My roommate, who was a computer science student, and me at the time, I was actually pre-med. One of the teachers for my CS roommate, Tom, came in, saw the network in the room, and said, "Hey, Tom, this is a fantastic network setup. The wiring is very clean. You did a great job here." My roommate, Tom, said, "I didn't do this. It was Chris, the pre-med student over here." And so my university hired me to redo the network for the computer science department. And so I learned about Cisco switching. I got my CCNA. I figured out, how to do all of those things. And then my university paid me, ironically, more than what my actual tuition was to help out with the CS department. So I did that, and I realized that, oh my gosh, this is a very lucrative thing that I can learn how to do very quickly. And so then I started, that's how I started my career. I got into networking, and then I learned operating systems, and then I learned servers, and then I learned data centers, and then I learned virtualization, and then I learned cloud, and now I'm learning programming and development. So here I am.
So understanding human emotions, feelings, and thoughts, behavior, the nature product you understood with your degree. Technology is human created product, and cloud, virtualization, data centers, servers is something human creation. So nature creation you understood, and now you are learning and teaching and attending conferences. In the podcast you are telling human created things. So how that psychology degree is helping you to be a better and great technologist?
So it's funny. When I got into my tech career, at the very beginning, it was very much fixing technological problems. As my career progressed, as I started going higher and higher up into organizations and working with directors and VPs and SVPs and then C-level people, I started using my technology chops less and less and less, and started using my psychology chops more and more and more. When I walk into a company and they want me to come in and fix things, 9 times out of 10, it's not the technology, it's the people. And so I leverage my psychology skills and my interpersonal communication stuff and getting people to use the same words. So when I say words, the words that you hear sometimes aren't the same words that I say. And what I encourage folks to do is say, okay, I just said all of these words. Now you tell me back what you thought you heard me say. And that's a very powerful tool for figuring out where the miscommunication is at any level within an organization. I do that with directors and their subordinates. I do that with C-level people and their SVPs. I call it, so when you have two siblings that are fighting with each other, sometimes parents have this joke, they call this thing the get along t-shirt. It's like a giant t-shirt, and you put both kids in the one t-shirt, and they have to stay in that t-shirt until they figure out whatever it is that they're fighting about. So I jokingly tell, executives, if executives are in a boardroom having a fight, I'm like, don't make me put you in the get along t-shirt. And then they'll have a big laugh, and that'll diffuse the situation, and then we move on from there. So it's a mixture of communication skills. It's a mixture of humor. It's trying to get folks to, realize that everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's a human, and we all need to be able to ask dumb questions and be able to not fear failure. So my job a lot of times is just getting people into a comfortable environment where they can be open with each other.
So how is AWS services helping humanity?
That's a loaded question. How are AWS services helping humanity? Well, I don't know if we can actually measure that. I would say that if they are in fact helping humanity, it would be because they are able to fail fast. So now when I'm in a startup, I don't have to buy hardware. I don't have to hire a bunch of folks internally to help me provision networking and learn about, all the things. I can rent a server or rent serverless compute or, rent a large language model and not have to, become an expert in 17 different things. I can just be an expert in the idea that the problem that I want to fix. So if cloud is helping humanity, and that's still debatable. They burn a lot of energy. They are getting better about recording their energy and figuring out how to, use renewables resources for that, for which I applaud them. Then I would say that is how AWS services are helping humanity.
So how you have both architect and a people's person in you?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think so. I hope so.
And how do you balance your logical and emotional thing?
I have to say that it's tough. It's not easy to, because when I'm working with a customer, I can get frustrated too. I have to figure out how to, work with folks that sometimes are intractable, or, they've been doing this thing for 20 years, and, they can't be taught any new things because that's the way they've always done it. And that's the way they're going to continue to do it, even, and they can't see the better way. And so sometimes I get frustrated too. I have to say that, I'm good. So I meditate. I do yoga. I do a lot of things to help me get in touch with still mind and beginner mind. Um, so I think that's what I use as my tool set for balancing the emotional side versus the technical side.
So how much technology you know and you understood?
Oh boy, how much technology do I know and understand? I don't understand the question. What do you mean?
The technology, research that you have done and working in technology, using technology services and tools and
Hmm.
products, how much
Hmm.
you think that you know that are helping you to solve the technology problems for enterprises?
Well, a very wise man once said that the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing. So I always tell people I know nothing, and then I start from there. But if I were to sit down and try to formulate what I know, I have this really good question. I'm actually interviewing for a new developer advocate for my team right now, and I have this really good question that helps me understand how much somebody else knows about a technology stack. And the question is this: if I open up a web browser and type in www.hashicorp.com or whatever, and then I hit enter, walk me through what happens. And depending upon how deep the person gets into that, if they can walk me down the OSI stack and walk me back up the OSI stack, if they can talk about bus speeds and electrons being written to a hard drive, DNS provisioning, load balancing, primary DCs versus secondary DCs, IP NAT gateways, IP traversal, encapsulation, all the way over to the server side, and response queries and HTTP 200s, and onto the disk and the database on the back behind that web server. That usually tells me how much somebody knows about a tech stack. Now, I personally have, I understand hardware. I've built servers since I was a kid. I've got all of the certifications from A+ to MCSE to CCNA and CCIE. Virtualization. I am a VMware vExpert, and I've been doing VMware. I did VMware for about 15 years. I have a VCIX for 4, 5, and 6. And then I pivoted over to AWS, and I have all of the associate certifications, all of the professional certifications. I don't have any of the specialties because I kind of just stopped doing that. And now I'm working on like developer tools. So I'm studying Python and JavaScript and web development and Git and GitHub and all of those things too. So I've throughout my career, I've been in the business now for about 25 years. Throughout my career, I've touched everything in the tech stack, from disks. I was a storage administrator back in the old days. I was a DBA for a hot minute. I've worked in a bunch of startups, so I've worn a lot of hats. And now I'm starting to get into the development side. So I think I've pretty much touched everything in technology, including clouds.
You said you ask deep questions and you always have questions. So when
Hmm.
you meet different developers or different technology experts, what kind of questions that you ask and why you ask? Why you have questions?
Well, I mean, it depends on the venue and the format. So if we're talking on my podcast on V Brown Bag, then I'll ask them about their specialties. I'll ask them, what are the things that excite them? What are the things that they're working on? And the audience for V Brown Bag are new learners, folks that are like getting into it. It's beginner to intermediate learners. And so when I talk to people that are very advanced in their field, I say, I'm going to ask you a question, but answer, explain it like I'm 5. Give me the kindergartner answer, then give me the intermediate answer too. So that, when folks can watch this in the future, so for example, I had a lady on that is a policymaker for AI down in Washington, DC. Brilliant woman. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask you questions about AI, and I would like to get 2 answers back. One for somebody just learning AI, and a second answer for somebody that has an intermediate understanding of AI and, really wants to get into the nuance. That way, when you watch it the first time, and then you realize, oh, I like AI, I want to learn more about ML, you can then rewatch the exact same episode and learn more about it from watching it twice. Eventually, further down the line, when you have a better vocabulary for that topic. If I'm talking to somebody not on the podcast, like at a conference or something, then it'll be much more casual. Sometimes you have to read the person to figure out, do they even want to talk about this, or do they just want to talk about, their pets or or their kids? Sometimes I just have a conversation with folks about their dog.
So how do you understand enterprise, and how much time you understand to know the architecture of it?
Enterprise just in general, or like specifically within companies? What do you mean?
Yeah, as an enterprise architect, how much time you take usually to understand or to create architecture for an enterprise?
Okay, so the process for this is it's usually a 2-week long requirements gathering process. So there's 4 things that you try to get out of an architectural design: requirements, risks, assumptions, and constraints. The requirements are, so like, say a company says, I want you to make this thing for me. So you establish what kind of project guidelines you want to do. So the requirements are the things that lead to the success of that project. What are the things that have to be done? Absolutely bare minimum. Those are called your functional requirements. Then there's requirements, risks, assumptions, and constraints. So the risks are the risks that could possibly stop those requirements from being established. Assumptions are the things that the company has assumptions about, like we assume that you're going to use AWS or Azure or this solution is going to be on-prem. And then the constraints are what things are going to be the constraints around the project. Budgetary constraints, you can only spend $50,000, or we have to use NetApp for your back end. So I spend about 2 weeks figuring out what the requirements, risks, assumptions, and constraints are for a given project. And then I use those 4 data points or the data points within those 4 buckets to create the solution. That process usually takes about another 2 weeks, wherein I iterate with the stakeholders and I go and I say, okay, this is the first design that I've made based upon all of your requirements, risks, assumptions, and constraints. And that'll usually be about 70 to 80% there. I then iterate with the stakeholders to fine tune that design through that course of another 2 weeks to really solidify what that design is going to look like, make sure that the SVP and the director and the engineers are all cool with what that design is going to look like. And then we actually start the initiation of the project, usually about a month into it.
So how is working with small, medium, and large scale companies?
Oh, vastly different. Small companies are very loosey. The larger the company, the longer the project takes. Even if you're trying to create the exact same thing, more people means more stakeholders, more meetings that have to get done, more calendars that have to be juggled. Smaller companies are better at moving fast, but the I'll be honest, you don't get as much money from smaller companies. So you work with SMB. So SMBs is an acronym, small medium businesses. You work with SMBs to figure out and suss out a project to create your POCs and everything, or your proof of concepts. And then when you figure it out, at a lower level, can you scale up this solution? Can you figure out, can this be enterprise ready? Then you approach enterprises and you do the same solution there with the scaling and the knowledge and the experience that you learn from the project with your SMBs.
So which one you like to spend time on?
I like them all. I really enjoy working both with SMBs and with enterprise level customers. For different reasons. I like enterprises because you get to meet a lot more people. You get to have a lot more finely tuned, experienced people working on things with you. And I like startups because they move really, really fast and everybody wears a bunch of hats. The thing that I liked about consulting when I was an EA for WWT, I was considered a consultant. The thing that I liked about that was I was put into a new company every 3 to 6 months. I was brought into the company, figure out what was going wrong and fix the thing and then move on to the next company. So I love a very fast pace of learning. I love meeting new folks. I love meeting new challenges and being exposed to new technologies. So being an EA for WWT was super fun for me in that regards. That was my day job. The thing that I was doing at night was basically effectively being a DA as well. So during the day I was an EA, at night I was a DA, and now I'm just a DA during the day. So yeah, I really enjoyed working with all different sizes of companies, but for very different reasons.
So seeing the behind picture, the Lord Buddha behind you tells me that there is a spiritual person in you. And with your degree, I can understand you are a psychologist. And being in technology, I can see you are a technologist and working in bartender and working in different places, being in different 3 degrees and 2 different countries. So how do you define this diversity, like diverse person in you?
So I do have imposter syndrome. Does your audience know what imposter syndrome is? Okay. Yeah. So I do have that. I always try to level up and skill whenever I take on a new challenge, whether that be a new hobby or a new technology or a new martial art or whatever like that. I always over rotate. I always go a little bit too hard on it. And I think that is because of my imposter syndrome. So I am a very confused mess of expertise, not realizing how good I am at some things, and also sometimes I also have a really good vision of how bad I am at something. It's a mess. I'm a mess. It's a whole big mess.
So you understand the hardware, the infrastructure of the technology, and now you are learning JavaScript. The programming languages, and the software development. So comparing with your psychology degree, where you have understood the human body and the thoughts which are invisible. So do you relate with human thing with technology, because the physical body is equal to infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, data centers, servers, and thoughts with the data?
I mean, there are analogies, but I don't think that there's a one-to-one mapping of the technology stacks to the human psyche. Honestly, I think that the people part is harder. They call them hard skills and soft skills, and that the hard skills are the technology, learning IP address tables and CIDR blocks, and creating functions and, defining variables and stuff like that. That's the hard skills. And then they say the soft skills are figuring out communication and how people work together and getting somebody who is tractable to do something that you want them to do. I think it's weird because I think the soft skills are harder to learn than the hard skills. So they should flip flop the names. The tech should be the soft skills and the people should be the hard skills, but that's neither here nor there. I think that to be good at technology, you have to be good at communicating with humans too. And that's super tough because a lot of the times the reasons why we get into computers is because they're easier than humans. Like I got into computers because playing computer, you put in some input. This was, back when I had my Commodore 64, you learn basic, you put in some input and stuff comes back. And it's very simple. And it's very easy. And talking to people with emotions is harder, way harder. So folks that get into computers naturally gravitate towards not being, I don't want to say that everybody that's in computers isn't good at talking to other humans. But there is a propensity for folks in tech to shy away from. We have a lot of introverts in tech, so teaching technical people soft skills, I think, is a very valuable endeavor, and I try to do that too, in my own little way.
So, what is Brown Bag podcast?
So Brown Bag started about 14 years ago. Initially it was a group of guys, and this was before I came on. Initially it was a group of guys, Alistair, Cody, John, and a couple of folks that were studying for their VMware certifications. They got together every Wednesday night and they're like, hey, let's study for our VM certs. And then somebody got the bright idea to start recording it. So they hit record on a camera and they studied live. And they created a really good body of work for VMware certifications. And so they were like, okay, what are we going to, if we're going to publish this, what are we going to call this thing? And in corporate culture, there are these things called brown bag lunches, where you take your lunch and you go to the lunchroom and there's somebody there teaching something. So everybody's eating their lunch and there's somebody up in front presenting on a topic or something like that. And so those were called brown bag lunches. And we weren't going to like physically show up in a place. So it was a virtual brown bag. So we called it Brown Bag. And what it is somebody comes on the show with something that they want to talk about, some technology that they're excited about, something that they want to do. And me and my other co-hosts, we come from different backgrounds. We've got me as an enterprise architect. We've got Shala as a DevOps engineer. We've got Sean as a AI, ML, and infrastructure as code person. And we've got Roger as a cloud security guy who's also learning AI and ML now. And so we ask questions to the presenter from all of those different career points. And then we just have a good time. We crack jokes and we shoot the poop and we just, ask them, any kind of question, either professionally or about, personal stuff too. Because we had one lady that was on, she was talking about her Python stuff. And then she let slip the fact that her husband was a lead singer in a death metal band. And we're like, what? Wait a minute. Hold on. I have so many questions. So we talked about Python and death metal for an hour. It started off with VMware. But then when I came on, we started branching out and we started doing things like, VMware is it's virtualization. Cloud has, I'm not going to say supplanted virtualization, but it's, there's a lot more interest in that and serverless and all those other things. So I said, hey, we need to branch out. We can't just be doing VMware stuff. So we started doing all of the certifications, AWS certifications, Azure certifications, Linux certifications, Git and GitHub. And then I was like, okay, well, there's certain technology stacks that there's no cert for it, but people still need to know it to be good in technology. They need to be good at Git. They need to be good at version control and GitHub and learning all of those things. So now we have multiple series running at the same time. We have a track on AI and ML. We have a track on Python and development in general. We have a track on certifications, cloud certs. We're doing a track on Linux as well. And honestly, right now, generative AI is super, super hot. So we've been doing a track on that, not only teaching people how to leverage it to make their jobs easier, but also the ethical implications and what the policymakers are thinking about AI too. Because we want to make sure that when our audience is using AI, that they are using it ethically. And when I mean ethically, they understand the ramifications of it can be wrong, it can be very wrong, and it can be, and depending upon the input, it could also be horribly racist or misogynist. So, so giving people a broader understanding of the full view of a technology is the goal of vBrown.
So AWS services are like everywhere. It's a global thing. So now AI, the advanced technology. So you mentioned the ethical things. So from different countries, human beings from different parts of the world, the planet. So how this ethics means to everyone?
That's a really tough question to answer because, depending upon a person's upbringing, depending upon what country they come from, depending upon their religious beliefs, they can have different ethical guide stars. So I think what's going to be super important and a very difficult problem to solve is figuring out the more people that are involved in this problem from the more backgrounds from different parts of the world, the more people, the larger the sample size that we have of folks fixing this problem, the better chance we have of actually getting a good solution that suits everybody. This cannot be a solution that is solved by 20-year-old tech bros in San Francisco. It's got to be a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different ages, and a lot of different, ethnic origins.
You have been in technology for 20 plus years. You have seen the evolution of the technology. You saw the technology before cloud and after cloud, and how businesses are changing and how they are adopting to the new way. And as a solutions architect, as a enterprise architect, you are solving problems in different ways. So how do you define this constant change that is happening in technology? And we are in that level where we are using AI, advanced ChatGPT, and top business leaders like Elon Musk, Microsoft, Amazon, all the technology companies are thinking about advancing technology and help humanity with the technology tools and services that we have. And also with the technology, how do you define that 20 years ago, how the reality, the society was there, and how this technology today, there's the global communications happening. All countries are interconnected today. The content is exchanging. People are visible to each other with YouTube and all these technology channels. How do you define this drastic change that happened in this 20 years with the technology?
I think it's a good thing. The 20 years ago, you and I would not have been able to do this. We wouldn't have been able to, do a meeting across the planet and have, a face-to-face like this. So I find this super valuable. Being able to exchange ideas with folks that would take me 5 days to fly to is something that I'm very appreciative of. There are bad actors out there who misuse this technology. Misinformation, political strife, the bad side of social media, all of those things as well. So I think on the whole, it's been really good. I think that we need to be very cautious about the abuses and and the anonymity, because when humans are anonymous online, they have a propensity to, be jerks. When you and I are in a room together, we talk like humans. When you are a faceless command line interface, people can be crappy. And I mean, I've even done it myself. I've been a jerk to people online, and like afterwards, I was like, I shouldn't have said that, and then I delete my tweet. So I I think on the whole, it's been good for civilization. I think that policymakers and lawmakers need to stop using it for ill and figure out how to get out of the way, but also give people guardrails to not figure out how people can be less jerky online.
So what suggestions that you have that you think that policymakers or the governance, the top leaders or the decision makers need to think for next generations with the technology that they are going to give to the humanity?
Well, I mean, it's tough because my gut reaction is to say less anonymity, but there's also privacy concerns. I mean, there are people out there that need to remain anonymous for very, very good reasons. I'm very much out there, and my social media presence is very loud. But there are folks out there that need to remain anonymous. I think there just needs to be some kind of way to figure out how do we tag bad actors so that they can't be jerks online, but also not expose vulnerable members of society in a way that they don't wish to be exposed. How to get there, I don't have a great off the top of my head solution.
So you talk with technology experts, you talk with devs, you talk with developers, you talk with business leaders, and you understand the technology business. So it took
I try to understand it.
So today you are at a place where things are far better than 20 years ago. So after 20 years from now, can we, I'm curious because your words and your valuable thoughts about this is going to, reach a lot of people. So how do you, with the expertise that you have today, after next, 20 years, can we be multi-planetary species with the communication system that we have today, working for the productivity, working from different parts of the world? What kind of change we can imagine with all countries' contribution?
I genuinely hope that within 20 years we are a multi-planetary species. That would be absolutely amazing. I don't think that with the way things are going right now, we are setting ourselves up for success. We are far too consumed with strife amongst ourselves. I hope that we have some way to focus on problems that are bigger than ourselves. We are all one humanity, and a lot of this hoarding and we clearly have a lot of problems. This, for the folks in the future listening to this is 2023. There's a lot of bad things going on right now that we have manufactured and done to ourselves. I hope that we can find and focus on a problem. And I know that if we all got together and just concentrated on one thing at a time, we could knock these things out very, very quickly. The best thing that we can do for ourselves is make sure that everybody has an extraordinarily good education. And that is the big thing about the internet. Everybody has access to every piece of information out there. If we can make sure that all of that information is actually scientifically valid and legitimate, and we're not spinning our wheels with like people trying to convince us that the earth is flat, then there's no limit to the things that we can do. But we've got to stop messing it up for ourselves.
So can we expect a data center out of the planet?
an extraplanetary data center on the moon?
Yeah.
Who knows? You know what? I mean, we've already got a couple of modules up there, so I'm guessing that there's going to be one within 20 years. Absolutely. Why wouldn't we?
So I asked the same question to Jeff, and he said we have planned for 5 years. We don't know what happens after that.
Nice. Are they going to have an availability zone on the moon in 5 years?
Yeah, I asked him because we have data centers under the ocean, water. They
Yep.
are everywhere. The information transfer is happening with these data centers. Can we
Mm.
expect there? So he said it depends on the need. If the humanity, like humans needs, to have the communication system, then definitely there the Amazon Web Services data center will be there.
You know what? I play a lot of video games. Right now I'm playing Starfield, where humanity has become a not just multi-planetary, but multi-galaxy species. I wish I would be alive to see something like that.
Awesome. So at last, what do you say about my work, my global communication, about my YouTube channel and podcast, your observation,
I think
everything?
I love it. I love what you're doing, reaching out to folks across the planet and just pinging them and seeing, these kinds of conversations are super valuable. Every time somebody reaches out to me or I reach out to somebody else and we can make a connection across the planet and then maybe one day in Vegas meet up for a coffee. I love doing stuff like this.
So what do you say about my questioning in this conversation?
Oh, they're very thoughtful. They're good questions. I like that you're tying in thoughtfulness about humanity and some of the soft skills. A lot of times technology podcasts are just about like, okay, this is a hard skill. What do you think about this? What do you think about the next 2 or 3 weeks of innovation? You're thinking about 10, 15, 20 years, and I appreciate that.
So can you share your work to my audience so that they can know the work that you're doing, can follow you?
Yeah. So if you Google Mistwire, Mistwire, I am like the first 3 pages of hits. That's you'll see my LinkedIn, you'll see my Twitter account, you'll see my Threads account, my Mastodon, all of the things. My blog, the V Brown Bag podcast. Just Google Mistwire, and you'll see all the things.
And your podcast?
The podcast is called V Brown Bag. If you go to vbrownbag.com, that's the website. Or if you're on the YouTube channel and you just YouTube/@vbrownbag, then you'll see it. We've got about 2,500 videos up right now over the past 13 years. Tons of really, really good content. I always go back and watch stuff years past. Like I'm rewatching the Python series right now because there's some valuable nuggets in there that at the time I didn't appreciate. So I'm now going back and watching some of the expert level videos and going, oh, that's what they meant. So yeah, V Brown Bag.
So I'll put your web links in the description, also on the screen as well. People who find my video on YouTube or anywhere in the internet can able to see the work that you're doing, can learn from you. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
You absolutely can, of course.
Also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, of course.
And one last observation, because it means a lot to me. I did masters in software engineering, also bachelors in computer science and engineering. Right
Nice.
now, I'm doing DevOps engineering projects for a UK company and also for a US company remotely from India.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a DevOps engineer. So I have completely a technology background. Me having a technology skills and technology skill set, technology background, and that is my full-time job. Actually, DevOps engineering is my full-time job. Having conversations like this from everywhere on the planet and talking with different experts. I also interviewed people who worked in space technology, NASA, the directors, and also people who are working in police department, or authors, psychologists, who are completely out from the technology. So how this communication that I'm doing with different human beings from different parts of the world, they can be leaders, engineers, architects, doctors, like everybody, like everyone, I'm talking with completely different people. How this is going to contribute to my career in coming days?
Oh, I think it's going to be hugely valuable. Um, being Getting out into the community has been a force multiplier for my career. I want to say, like, I didn't really get into community until about 15 or 13 years ago. Excuse me. Prior to that, I was, just doing the regular things, sysadmin, networking guy, whatever like that. After I got into the community, after I started talking with people at local meetups and figuring out that, hey, I like talking about this. I like getting up on stage and doing presentations. And then I got into the podcast. It's been absolutely immense for my career. Getting the vExpert designation back in the day, then getting the AWS Hero designation. People know my material. My entire career is out on the internet. So if somebody wants to see what they would be getting into if they wanted to hire me, they just Google Mistwire and there I am. There's all my stuff. If they like it, great. If they don't like it, then they move on to the next person. So community involvement, podcasting, getting your name out there, getting your face out there is huge for not just content creation, but also for your own brand.
That means a lot to me. Thank you again, Chris, for your valuable time, and definitely a lot of people on the planet are going to get benefit with the contribution that you're doing through
I hope
this
so.
technology, contribution.
Cool. Well, Sai, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. It was wonderful chatting with you and your audience.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.